it's my great honour to introduce Suzanne Watson from Approach PR, a local PR agency in Ilkley, so not too far, is it? No. Suzanne has actually, like many of you, started your career in journalism and then moved into PR and obviously successfully runs her own agency, which, and I promised I would embarrass you, Michaela, last year you had one of our students, Michaela, on work experience. So a warm welcome to you with Leeds Trinity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you've got an itch, a really bad itch, and you try not to scratch. Now imagine that your whole body itches. Your whole body is on fire. It's like a million tiny creatures just running around underneath the surface of your skin. Now, try not to scratch. There are around 1 in 12 adults and 1 in 6 children in the UK who suffer with eczema. Every day, just like me, they experience the torment of being drawn to claw at the deep-rooted itch, knowing that the pain, the inflammation, and the blood from the damage of their own nails will be devastating. This is an extract from an article that I wrote in 1993 when my eczema was at its worst. I'd had it for 14 years. It followed me through my career in journalism, and it's followed me through my career in PR. But eczema is a massive part of the who, the why, the what, the where, and the when of who I am as a professional today. Approach PR is an Ilkley-based public relations consultancy. We've been going for 15 years. We're a team of 6, and we work for a massive range of clients. We've never specialised in one particular industry. We work with business-to-business clients, so that's manufacturers who perhaps make food, manufacturers who make chemicals, they might make equipment. We also work for the Kirkgate Shopping Centre, formerly the Arndale in Bradford. So it's all about getting customers to go to the Kirkgate and think twice before going to the Broadway, the new big shiny shopping centre in Bradford. We also work for people like Acorn Stairlifts and Auto Chair, who are responsible for bringing disability mobility equipment into the lives of people to make a difference. And essentially, Approach PR is a team that is award-winning. We're a team of former journalists and PR practitioners who every single day are working with the media to make a difference not only to our clients' lives, but also to the lives of the general public who need educating on where to spend their hard-earned cash, who want educating on who to trust and who to do business with. Approach PR is also the team that's responsible for the awesome Reverend Ray Biddis. I don't know how well you can see it there, but Reverend Ray Biddis is an ordained Baptist minister who came to us years ago, 2010, because he had created the world's first motorcycle hearse. And he wanted to get that motorcycle hearse up onto the internet. He wanted it on broadcast, he wanted it in all the press, but he had absolutely no money whatsoever to do it with. So we actually took Reverend Ray on as a client, even though we knew he just didn't have the budget, because we knew he had an amazing story to tell. Our job was finding a way of getting something very commercial out into the national media. So we suggested to Ray that he set a Guinness World Record to have the fastest motorcycle hearse. He said any biker worth his salt would not want to make their last journey in a car. So he pledged to get every biker that was planning their funeral to use his motorcycle hearse. We got him up to Elvington Airfield and he set a world record, 143 miles an hour. He screamed down that runway and set a record. And as a result of that, we got him on This Morning with Philip Schofield. We got him on Sky News, and we got him on ABC Australia. And also, he's now a gay icon in San Francisco. So Ray has got an awful lot to credit PR with. We're also the team that named the UK as the world's best sandwich maker. Our client, Deli France, has a competition. I'm sure you've all heard of it, the International Sandwich Competition. And our UK winner there with the MD of Deli France and Brian Turner, who used to be a massive celebrity chef at the time, is there with Edward Antonini and his spicy chicken balti baguette. And that made the headlines in The Guardian. It also got onto GMTV. So PR can be massive, massive fun. We can get some brilliant things that we get to talk about, but there's also a really serious business element to PR, and that's where a good knowledge of journalism and journalism practice comes in. So it all started with a very, very, very shy me with no teeth by the looks of it. Really shy child. All I loved was reading and English. And by the time I got to 18, with the lovely big 80s perm there, I was studying my A-levels, communication studies, English and domestic science. Which I don't even know if you can do that at A-level anymore. And when I was doing my A-levels, I decided I was interested in media. Communication studies had switched me on to the media and analysing body language and people and behaviour. So I applied to the Telegraph and Argus in Bradford for some work experience. And I got a week's work experience there, and it was phenomenal. It was transformational. Suddenly, I was transported from a school into a busy newsroom. They were smoking, they were tapping away on the keyboards and the typewriters. It was absolutely frenetic. I went out with an education journalist and covered meetings at Bradford City Hall. I went out with a photographer and saw every dark corner of Bradford that I never even knew existed. It was unbelievable, and it put a fire in my belly like nothing I've ever experienced since. So getting that work experience at that early age was completely transformational. Anyway, everything changed. I got my A-levels, and then my parents paid for me to have my first independent holiday abroad. Went to Greece, and there I met a bloke. And that totally blew all prospects of journalism, everything out of the water, because all I wanted was to be with him. And I uprooted from Bradford to North Wales and took up residency with this bloke. So what I did next was to work in a bakery. I was putting jam in donuts, I was putting the custard in vanilla slices, I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, putting my overalls on. My parents were devastated. Still don't think they've really forgiven me to this day. But what it did was it made me realise that actually this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. Actually, I need to get back on the path that I set myself 12 months ago and start looking again at where I can start to put my journalism passion into practice. So I wrote again to the local newspapers, North Wales newspapers, and they offered me a 2-week placement. And while I was there, I was going out again with journalists. There were photojournalists there, so they were doing their own photography and doing the stories at the same time. That was quite novel in that era. And after 2 weeks, I loved it so much, I asked if I could keep going back. Whenever I had free time, which I had a lot of, because I'd finished work by 9 o'clock in the morning, because I'd done the donuts by then. And they wanted me to go back in. They said, as long as you're willing to come in and work, we'll give you some work to do, all unpaid. I did that for another 6 weeks, and at the end of that, an opportunity came up for a full-time paid journalist. And that's where I started my full-time work. Now, North Wales newspapers had 2 papers. They had the Wrexham Leader, which was a weekly, and they had the Evening Leader, which obviously was a daily. So I spent over a year working on those 2 papers, meeting the tough deadlines of the daily, because that was a very, very fast pace, but then writing with more of a features element for the weekly paper, the Wrexham Leader. After I'd worked there, I then moved back to Bradford. The lure of Yorkshire pulled me back and managed to get a job on the Spenborough Guardian, which I'll come back to in a minute. So what about journalism? For somebody who really had just left school and was propelled into this world of business, this world of politics, of economy, of MPs, suddenly I was 19 years old and I was having conversations with business leaders. I was 19 years old and I was being sent out to the home of somebody who just died to get a photograph and a quote from the parents about how they felt about that. And I was also catapulted into the shop floor. Doing this was a picture from Fox's Biscuits in Batley. And it was just amazing that I've been from this cosseted environment, this world of just school, propelled out into the community to report on other people's lives. This is the team that I worked with on the Spenborough Guardian, and I brought this up because this is the class of 90. So just excuse the big ties and the snazzy shirts. But I thought you just might be interested to know where this class of 90, these journalists that worked on a little family-owned newspaper in Cleckheaton, where we all ended up. Obviously, the back middle there, obviously I went on into PR in later years. Jonathan, top left, he stayed in journalism. He worked on the Yorkshire Evening Post and on the Harrogate Advertiser, and he's a sub-editor now. Emma and Sally, the two girls in the middle, they're now both working on the TNA. Emma is the features editor on the TNA, and Sally also works in features. Emma does so many celebrity interviews, face-to-face, over the phone. She also gets to travel. She does travel journalism now as well. So she has a phenomenally privileged position where she gets to meet people, see the sights, and just report back on it all as part of her day-to-day job. And Joanne at the front, she worked for the Environment Agency, the press office. So you've got a group of people there, all started at the same age, all between 19 and 22 in that picture. All went off into very, very different worlds, but all worlds which have obviously got journalism at the heart. So just looking at some of the stories that this 19-year-old me was covering and reporting on, this was one of my very first front page scoops, if you like. And it was devastating, it was horrendous. This was somebody that we actually knew had died in a motorcycle crash on a road that I travelled on every single day. But because I knew him, I had an insight into his circle of friends and his family, I was able to put all that to one side and get straight out there, speak to the right people, get the photographers out to the right place, and get the quotes that made that story hit that same day's front page. But the trauma of working on something like that, yes, you get an adrenaline rush, and it's not until afterwards that you think, hell, that is somebody's life. That is somebody's life that's absolutely devastated. But I think the key with journalism, because I love people, I love talking to people, I'm genuinely interested in the story behind the person. There's a natural empathy that comes out when you're communicating with people to get that good story. You need to be able to relate to somebody, to be able to talk in such a way that they want to talk back to you. And there is nothing like journalism giving you the breadth of experience that gives you the life experience to be able to do that in a very professional but effective way. Equally as this 19, 20-year-old journalism, I was having to get my head around council politics and why an old man who lived in Wrexham wasn't able to have a bath more than once every 6 weeks because the council weren't able to put the facilities right in his house. So again, there was quite an edge to what I was having to deal with on a day-to-day basis and what I was having to learn, think on my feet, and then effectively write up and communicate out to a very critical audience. Well, how about that for a 90s rock band? That is just quality, isn't it? For some reason, maybe it was my youth, I was nominated the writer for the music preview. So whenever there was a concert coming up every Friday in Wrexham, I was the one who was sent out there to interview the band. I didn't have the first clue about heavy metal and rock. You know, I was more, well, I can't even tell you what I was more into at the time. It's so long ago. But getting that music preview, that byline, my name, every single week, it meant that the bands started coming to me. They knew I was the person to speak to get them the column inches, to get the bums on the seats, to make the concerts a success. So it was a heck of an accolade in those early days in journalism. And another very, very different area to dealing with crime, crashes, politics. Suddenly there was the music. This is a fantastic reflection of how long ago this all was. This is a couple that was separated by the Second World War, but then their families were separated again by the Berlin Wall. And this story appeared as a result of the wall coming down, the families being able to communicate with each other again and getting together. And what I love about this piece of coverage is how the photograph, even without the copy, tells a story. And a massive part of PR, a massive part of what we do every single day is create the right kind of photography that illustrates our client's mission, service, product, that helps to communicate that story. And in one picture there, you've got the old couple chinking the glasses, you've got the welcome sign at the top and their children behind them. So I think that, again, is such a valuable lesson, going out with the photographers in the cars that 9 times out of 10 are like a bin on wheels, phenomenal press photographers, and actually seeing how a photograph is pulled together and then how it appears in the paper the following day. And just the last one, this was a really interesting time for me. The Gulf War was happening when I was a journalist on the Spenborough Guardian. And this girl was actually one of my peers, and she'd been called out to go and serve, and she had 3 weeks to get ready through exercise and to get used to chemical warfare suits before she was actually going out just to serve in the Gulf War. And there's a quote there from her mum, who was a widow. So again, part of my job as this cub reporter was speaking to a widow whose daughter was being sent out to the Gulf. And the skill in trying to get the right quote out of her that made the story come to life is something that you can only acquire through practice and experience. I put this up because this is one of my career lows. In 1990, I think it must have been 1990, when I was on the Spenborough Guardian, we got a press release to say that a brand new boy band was coming into Bradford, and they were performing at Maestro's on Manningham Lane. If there's anybody, I'm sure there's nobody who knows who Maestro's is on Manningham Lane. And we all, the entire office, turned the opportunity down to go and see and interview Take That. Just let it be said, by 1995, I was probably Take That's #1 fan, and still am today. So if you want to look at a career low, that's it. So the story unfolds. Essentially, I loved elements of journalism. What I didn't love was the death knocks. The fact that if somebody died, I was the one on the doorstep trying to get a photo, trying to get a quote. I didn't like full council. I didn't really like having to go to all the planning application meetings and all the full council meetings. It wasn't really what I wanted at the time. And I knew there must be some kind of profession that could take all this that I'd learnt and put it into a new environment. Believe it or not, I hadn't even really heard of PR, and I certainly couldn't look it up on the internet because there wasn't any. So it was a library job, getting out books, look at what professions are connected to journalism. And PR came up. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote and chucked my CV, chucked the letters out, used all the experience I gained in journalism, and managed to get myself a position as a junior account executive at a consultancy in North Wales, Quadrant PR. Bearing in mind, I'm probably 20, I'm 21 here. So I've gone from a very free and easy newsroom in Clackheaton where I'm with all my peers and it's all quite fun, apart from the elements of the job that I didn't like. But it was a really good, close team. Suddenly I found myself in a team of 10, everybody wearing suits, bricks as mobile phones. It was the kind of office where you didn't want to pick up the phone and do an interview because everybody in there was listening to every single word you said. It was so oppressive, it was terrifying, and yet I had to just crack on and do it. I was given some massive clients. I had to work on Kimberly-Clark, they make tissues, Warwick International, chemical manufacturer, Glaxo, who were making all the aerosols for inhalers, and I was single-handedly given the task of coordinating Livewire Cymru, which was a young enterprise event that ran across the entire of Wales. I was hosting and running launch events across Wales. I was writing speeches for the chairman who had to address all the entrepreneurs. I was absolutely papping myself. I was so far out of my comfort zone, I couldn't speak. And yet, I got through and I did it. And every single client, every single piece of copy related back to the work that I'd already done as a journalist. Thank goodness I'd been thrown into factories, into office openings, into meeting celebrities and VIPs. Thank goodness I'd done that because it gave me the confidence and some life experience to be able to hold my own with all these corporate clients. But then smack bang in the middle of that experience, my eczema reared its ugly head again. This had already happened on the Spenborough Guardian. The environment, while lovely with the right kind of people, was still exceptionally stressful. And although stress doesn't cause eczema, it can exacerbate it. It can certainly lead to an attack. And as I was networking with all these highfalutin businesses and MDs and corporates, my eczema hit again, and it was devastating. We're talking not being able to get out of bed because your skin has tightened so much. It's like living in a skin that's too small for your body. And yet I had to go out and meet people and hold my own and do interviews. Somebody said to me, why don't you write about what eczema's like? Why don't you put all that journalism and all that experience into practice and just tell people once and for all? Because all I could say is, nobody understands. They just keep telling me not to scratch. It's impossible. And I look like this. How can anybody ever understand? But I did. I actually put pen to paper and I wrote something called Eczema the Experience. And at that time, it was just a case of posting it out. I posted it out to about 20 different women's and lifestyle magazines and just blasted it out there. And the coverage that resulted from me talking about my experience was actually the beginning of a 23-year campaign that I have sustained ever since that day to raise awareness through my journalist skills of eczema and of the National Eczema Society, because there is a charity out there that supports people directly with eczema. But my story, You Try Not Scratching It, appeared in a national women's magazine, and the resulting letters, because there wasn't email then, the letters that flooded in, the people to whom that article had made a difference. Old, young, my age, parents, people suddenly related to what I had to say, and I suddenly realised I actually had quite a power here through the written word. I had a power to make a difference and to educate people. So I took that power to the next step. I moved to another PR agency, this time in Chester, and while I was there, I set up a support group for people with eczema. And I offered my hand out to other people who perhaps wanted to talk about the experiences of eczema. Through this, I ended up on the radio. So I started doing broadcast interviews. I ended up on the television. I ended up doing Watchdog Health Check. I spoke on Jeremy Vine live on Radio 2, all about the experiences of people with eczema. And it all came through writing that one article that just harnessed what living with this debilitating condition can actually do. But most importantly, what I wanted to do was to point people to a solution, point people to a support network that could help them. Following my Chester experience, I moved to an agency in Leeds. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Principals Agency. It's advertising principals on Street Lane. And they had a PR department at the time, and their clients included Waddington's Games. Well, Waddington's made, at the time, Squads. They made Sabutio, Puzz 3D, which are these three-dimensional jigsaws. And I was, again, catapulted into a world, this time business to consumer. Waddington's Games wanted people to buy their products. So again, what could we do to actually harness the genius of some of their things and get it out there into the media? So we got a Premiership footballer, a guy called David Batty. I don't even know if he still exists anymore, but David Batty was massive at the time. And we actually got him to the Waddington's factory in Wakefield to come and actually play the Squads cards. I don't know the first thing about football. I go as far as to say I actually hate football. But I found myself touring the country with other footballers, getting kids to play football games using Squads playing cards in schools. Again, that was absolutely terrifying. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do less. And yet, once I'd done it, it felt amazing. And the press coverage we got in the regionals, the press coverage we got in the sporting media for children was phenomenal and highly impacted on sales. And where the 3D jigsaw puzzles come, that was the day I managed to get myself onto Blue Peter. I had these puzzles, they stood about this high, so you'd have an Eiffel Tower and a Big Ben, and you literally built it up from polyurethane foam, some things you never forget. And we had it at a toy exhibition in January, and the BBC were parading around the exhibition, and the Blue Peter producers were there, and I managed to collar them, sold them the concept of the games. They then wanted me to take the puzzles in a taxi, back of a black cab, across London to BBC Studios, and actually assemble the products in the studio, where we got 5 minutes of live coverage for +3D jigsaws on Blue Peter. That was absolutely phenomenal. What a coup for a young PR executive. That was not only a phenomenal experience, but a heck of a coup for us as a business. I continued throughout all of my corporate PR career to use my own experiences of eczema to help support and guide other people. My daughter was born in 1999, and I actually talk about living your clients. We had a client called Baxi Clean Air, and they basically made ventilation systems that help reduce the humidity of your home so you don't get the house dust mites and you don't get the allergic reactions that you might otherwise get. So because I was terrified of passing my eczema on to my unborn child, and then obviously when she was a year old, I had the house kitted out with this stuff. I was living the client dream, and as a result, I actually spoke out very publicly about the client's products, but the fact that I was using them for my own benefit for my daughter. And it made such a difference, because a massive thing that we do in PR today consistently is we use case studies of people who have benefited from the products that we're talking about, or benefited from the services. There is nothing like, we call it third-party endorsement, so there's nothing like somebody else saying your product's amazing as a powerful message to the public. There's no point Baxi saying, buy our clean air products, because, you know, they're great. They need customers to talk about the benefits of the products. So again, it's tapping into the right story that helps to tell your clients, to sell your clients' products, essentially. After I'd left Principles, I was looking for a better work-life balance. It was 2001, my daughter was 1 year old, and I wanted to set up my own business, because that, I felt, was the only way I could get the flexibility to be the mum and to also be the business person. And the beauty of PR is it's such a flexible career. You can do it freelance. You can start your own agency. There's a mass of freelance PR consultants out there now. So I was able to take all the experience through my past 3 agencies, plus the journalism, and roll that all into a package which allowed me to work from home, as at the time I was SJ Communications. We then won a massive piece of business, which was Deli France, who we still work on today, and I changed the name of the business. I didn't want it to be all about me. I wanted it to be a brand in its own right. So we launched Approached PR Limited. And a huge thing that we've always done, we've always used the press, and obviously now social media, we've obviously always used the press to communicate the value of our own brand, to educate people about PR. There are so many PR consultancies out there that just go about doing a fantastic job, but they don't apply the same principles of PR to their own consultancies. We are massive believers in talking about who we are, in getting our faces out there, getting people familiar with the team behind Approach. And this started even from when we very, very first launched the business back in 2001. And in that picture, I was actually pregnant with my son, who was born then in 2003. But the campaign for eczema carried on going in my own time, unpaid. I kept talking about eczema. We did ultimately become the PR office for the National Eczema Society, and we did all the PR for their awareness weeks, which was a fantastically rewarding account to work on. But independently, I still talked about my own experience. And actually, in my capacity as a journalist, I was part of a press trip with some national media out to the Dead Sea in Israel. The Dead Sea is known for its properties for healing the skin. It's full of minerals and obviously the high salt content, which is why it's buoyant and you can float in it. So that was a phenomenal experience, which again pulled in the journalism, plus my experience of eczema, plus some of the PR skills that I'd learnt to actually experience the Dead Sea and then report back on it, not only for the Eczema Society, but also for the regional consumer media as well. In 2003, I had Ben. Melissa's skin was always perfect. We'd never had any problems with her skin, and I thought I'd cracked it. I thought my clean air system and my healthy living had meant that, you know, my children were going to be free of eczema. Ben was born, and unfortunately, from head to foot, he was covered in eczema, and I'd done nothing different to what I'd done with Melissa. Not long after this photograph was taken, we moved house, we quadrupled our mortgage, the business was running, it was running reasonably well. Melissa was just about to start school, and in January 2004, my husband left, and I was alone. I had a massive mortgage. I had a child who just started school and couldn't understand where a daddy had gone, and I had a son who was riddled with eczema, and I had a business to run. And at that moment, I honestly didn't know whether I should go on. I didn't know whether I could go on. But I sat down and thought about it really hard, and I realised, I've got 2 kids that I've got to fight for. I've got a home that I've moved into because it's a perfect family home, and I've got to keep this going. I've got a business that I've already put 4 years of graft into. I cannot let it go. It was a transformational moment in my life in 2004 where I thought, this is do or die. It's got to happen, and nobody else can make it happen other than me. So I decided to put my heart and soul into getting my business not only back on its feet from the devastation that I'd been through, but to excel and to start to make a difference to other people's lives as well. So Approach PR today is a team of 6 people. We have gone through a number of different changes. We've evolved as all businesses do. You have highs, you have lows. We've had a run-in with the bailiffs. One day we all turned up for work and we couldn't get in the office because our landlord hadn't been paying his landlord. All our computers were locked up, all our cuttings, all our belongings. We couldn't get in. And at that point, I had to negotiate to try and get in, and we had to clear everything out and relocate to Bradford. It was another moment where we could have been absolutely on our knees, but it was another moment when I thought, no, come on, we've got to do this, we've got to keep going. And to this day, we support not only the clients, obviously we support the clients, but we support our local community. And I am a massive believer in supporting the next generation of journalists and of PR consultants. Over the last 8 years, we've taken 6 different students into our business. Sometimes they come in as a sandwich placement. They'll spend a year with us as part of their PR degree. Sometimes they'll come in and spend 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Sometimes they'll just come and have a week's work experience. But essentially, I'm a massive believer, just in the same way that North Wales newspapers gave me that insight all that time ago, and the TNA gave me a week, all those things that transformed my career vision, I want to be able to do for other people today. And as a result, we've got graduates who have worked with us, we've got people who are doing the degrees, and we've had journalism students as well, all of whom I aim to give a very real experience of what PR is like today. And that's what leads to some of the awards. We've got over 25 business and industry awards, 2 of which are for being Yorkshire's Graduate Employer of the Year. We were up against Morrison's for Yorkshire's Graduate Employer of the Year. And we scooped the award, and it's because of the enrichment and the environment that we provide at Approach PR. But our other awards are for the campaigns we run. Rev Ray, you won't be surprised, the ordained Baptist minister with his lightning machine. He was an award winner for us, Delhi France award winner for us, and also just 3 years ago, I won the Inspirational Woman of the Year, and that picture means an awful lot to me because I lost my dad just this year, and it was one of his proudest moments, and mine, because everything that I'd stood for, everything I'd achieved in the past came together on that one night. Today, Approach PR works for some massive clients. We work for Avanti Gas, we work for the Kirkgate Shopping Centre, we work for Country Living magazine fairs that's held in Harrogate every single Christmas. We're an incredibly happy team who are very rewarded because not only do we work hard on the clients, but we work hard in our community as well. Being in Ilkley means we're incredibly privileged because we're on the doorstep of all sorts that's happening, but we make it our PR mission to get involved in the community. So I give my time and coordinate the PR for the Ilkley Carnival, which has gone from practically going broke to raising £15,000 in 1 year. And all that money goes back into the local community. We speak at the Sir Optimist. We support local businesses and local retailers. We do PR for free. We work with Ilkley Grammar School and go and support their students with initiatives that they're doing. And just last year I became a school governor at Bradford Grammar School because I've got experience that I can offer. I don't get paid, but my experience in PR and marketing and journalism means I've got something to give back to the Board of Governors at Bradford Grammar School. Eczema is still a massive part of my life. I'm now a trustee of the National Eczema Society, so rather than just talking about the condition, I actually have a place on the board making decisions for the charity. And I still today talk about my experiences and how I manage it with my children and how I cope with it, with Ben in particular, who still suffers quite badly today. I mean, both of those experiences, one's the Daily Express, one's the Daily Mail. And again, the feedback I get is very different these days because it's more through social media, but it still has an impact on people's lives. And that to me is the cornerstone of journalism and of PR. It's about making a difference, and it's about having an impact on people's lives because you have a way with words, you have a way with news, and it's your responsibility to communicate that story. Just to hark back, Emma, features editor on the Telegraph and Argus. This is just looking back, this is 20 odd years. We never knew what was ahead. Emma and I are phenomenally good friends. We travel Europe together. This was us earlier this year in Salzburg. I could never have imagined that Emma would be my path to this man. This is Michael Praed. And again, I'm sure you're all far too young to know who he is. He was my first love. He should have been the one that I would have married. He was Robin of Sherwood in probably 1984, let's say, 1984. Anyway, not that long ago, here he is today with me and Emma. Notice how he's not actually touching my skin. It's a little bit disappointing. I'm not a stalker, but I would have liked contact with Michael Praed. So thank you to Emma for that. And then that awful moment in 1992 when we turned down Take That. Look what happened last year. Look at that. Gary Barlow launching The Girls at Burnsall. Emma, in her capacity as a feature editor, was invited to interview Gary and the entire cast. I went armed with a camera, trying to look like I knew what I was doing, and managed to get in on the act. I've got a mug with that on at work. Last year I got married, there's a happy ending, the children are 17 and 13, it all worked out. You can never see it at the time, but things just have a habit of turning out for the right reasons. And today Approach PR is a multi-award winning company with a superb team of experts who believe in what they're doing and who excel every single day. My advice is push yourself out there. Success and happiness genuinely is just beyond your comfort zone. It's just your job to find it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there's so many points that, resonated from both journalism and PR lectures, and maybe some of your work experience placements, so important to you. Have we got any questions for Suzanne?
How difficult is it to keep up with social media, sort of as it first sort of came to prominence and now with it, constantly changing?
Yes, it's a key part of what we do now. And I mean, it's interesting because we have so many clients who you're kind of trying to drag kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And I just look at it as another communications tool. It's another way, it's another medium for getting your news, getting your story, getting your personality and your values out there. So it is tough. I mean, luckily, I've got a business full of social media natives. So these are people who've kind of grown up with it rather than me being an immigrant who's constantly trying to learn. But they are on it all day, every day. And what's interesting in our business is the shift in PR. People still do want traditional media relations, thank God, and that's amazing, because that is my kind of lifeblood, is your traditional media relations. But more and more of the accounts that we're winning and securing, people are wanting a social media presence. So we've got Hootsuite going, they're managing multi-accounts, but every element of social media for every client, we have to go through a strategy to pull that plan together. You can't just start spouting. We've got to know who they're trying to reach, who their audience is, what are the key messages, what is an influential element of the business, what's happening in their industry that we need to be putting out through social media. So the narrative has still got to be very considered, and it's still got to intrinsically tie back into that business's communication strategy. So it is challenging, but there isn't an element of PR that isn't challenging. It's just another area to monitor that gives us another voice for the clients that we're working with.
You're a little kid lad, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Oh, what to call it? We're just above Betty's. It's amazing.
Obviously, with the work that you do, you've got to form strong relationships with your clients. What would you say your best advice is for creating those strong relationships?
Oh, just be yourself. There's no point trying to be somebody that you're not. People see through it, and you know, we are communication specialists in a world which has never seen communication like it. So I always feel there is a place for just being real, just be who you are and relate. You know, I was saying about the elements of journalism where you need to relate to the person that you're speaking to get the best story out of them. That's just the same when you're dealing with clients. You know, try and see things from their perspective. I don't ever write a piece of copy without imagining how my audience is going to react. When you're in PR, however, your audience is your client who's got to approve that copy and the consumer or, you know, the business owner who's going to be reading the copy. So it's quite a fine balance trying to keep both audiences happy. The client wants to say one thing, but your editors, your journalists want to read something else. So just be who you are, be absolutely authentic, be honest, and just try and relate. Always see things from the other person's perspective. That way you can perhaps anticipate what they're going to ask and expect next.
Have you ever had to deal with one of your clients being in a crisis or anything like that?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's just part and parcel of working with businesses. When I worked at Principals PR, they were actually mopping up the crisis PR from the accident at Lightwater Valley. I don't know if you remember, but a girl was catapulted out of one of the roller coasters. And that team, not me at the time, but that team was actually dealing with the fallout of that, pulling the media statements together. Working in manufacturing, you know, again, especially in food manufacturing, you've got to be ready for contaminants, you've got to be ready for complaints. And I was at a client meeting only 2 weeks ago where somebody actually committed suicide while we were there having our client meeting. So we were writing crisis statements actually as part, you know, that was any other business on the agenda that we hadn't actually foreseen. We were writing crisis statements there and then. So we always advise any client to have a crisis strategy ready, just so that if the worst ever happens, you've got a plan in place for dealing with that. And that might even be just make sure that your receptionist is briefed not to say anything to the press, to put all the calls straight through to the PR team. But crisis is just a part of business. And as PR consultants, you've got to be ready for the unexpected because you're the ones on the firing line and creating the firewall for the client. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody at the end if anybody wants to speak to me one-on-one. Got time.